Well, a very good afternoon to you, and welcome to Xandermonium, the talk show that gets you talking. I'm Xander Gibb, and on today's show, I will be breaking down this week's hotter topics with my guest co-host, broadcaster, libertarian, and free thinker, Tony Losacco. You can interact with us during the show in the chat room at the bottom of the page if you keep scrolling down. Now, if it's not letting you make any commentary, that's because you have to join with either Facebook or Twitter. It's very simple. It just takes a few seconds so you can interact with us. You can also call us with your questions on 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061 for your questions or comments if you want to join in on the conversation. And you can also tweet us. My Twitter handle is @XanderGibb, XanderGibb, capital X, capital G. And Tony's Twitter handle is @FullStory2014. That's FULLSTORY 2014. Tweet me if you're too shy, and I will endeavor to make your point for you. So I'm quite astounded that people are already talking about New Year's resolutions. Can we please get Christmas out of the way first, and how next year is going to be different? But it got me thinking about New Year's resolutions. Every year we all make these resolutions to either stop drinking or smoking or lose weight, give up candy, get fit, and the list goes on. But most of us keep our resolutions and resolve for a few weeks. But then temptation rears its ugly head, and we are back to square one again. Now, one of my friends has come up with a novel idea to ensure that at least some benefit comes from his New Year's resolutions. He's decided to get sponsorship in order to encourage him to meet his goals. Now, if he meets his goals, those who sponsor him will pay the charity he has nominated, and if he fails, he will pay the charity that he has nominated. Now, we do go to some lengths in order to effect change, but one thing that prevents us from effecting change in our own lives is not temptation or addiction or even the plethora of excuses we trot out in order to delay the inevitable. Oh no, siree, it is our mindset and attitude that prevents us from achieving our goals in life. Now, no one knows more than me how easy it is to make excuses. I even wrote the book on excuses, or I actually really should. I actually ran out of excuses to effect change in my own life until I remembered that I was supposed to be living in faith and not fear. The fear of actually doing something different was a major contributing factor on my zeal for change and growth. Now, once I changed my attitude, it actually changed my outlook on the whole situation. And my fear of change and failure had gone, and I just went for it. And boy, am I glad that I did. Now, changing your own responses is not going to change overnight. And we have to get rid of the negative tapes we play in our head in order to succeed. Now, be patient with yourself, and change will come with positive mental health. That was Xander's soapbox for this week. And if you'd like to come and get on your soapbox, you can email me at Xander@XanderGibb.com. That's Xander@XanderGibb.com. So for any of you that have been reading the news this weekend will be aware of the fact that two of New York's finest, Officer Wen Jianlu and Rafael Ramos, were executed this weekend, shot and killed. And I would like to dedicate today's show to them and to the NYPD and police everywhere. And thank you so much for keeping us safe. And, you know, I've seen a lot of negativity on social media today. And, you know, to be honest, it's actually best ignored. It's best not challenged, because most people that do put negative commentary out there about the NYPD and police in general are really looking for a reaction. So the best thing to do is not to give it to them. Oh no, sorry. So I'm just waiting for my co-host to try to call in. Hello to everybody in chat today. Now that is one of the subjects we are going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the NYPD execution. So if you have an opinion on that, whether you're a member of the public or a member of law enforcement, you can call us on 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061. Call us with your opinions. Oh, yes, indeed. So hello to everybody in the chat room. If you're just joining us, it is Sunday once again, and it's Xandermonium time. And it appears my co-host is in the queue right now. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the one, the only, the friend and important person, the one and only Mr. Tony Losacco. Welcome back to the show, Tony. How you doing?
Thanks, Xander. Pretty good.
Good. So how's it down there in Florida today? I hear that it's been reported that there's been an officer was shot in your vicinity today, actually.
Actually, I didn't hear anything about that yet, but I haven't listened to the news yet today.
Right. Yeah, I just saw it as I was looking through social media today that a Florida officer had been shot and didn't get many more details. But obviously, on the heels of what has gone on this weekend here in New York City, it's kind of getting a little bit concerning.
Oh, so yeah, Tarpon Springs. Wow, yeah, you're right.
So let's kind of let's kick off with that. For those of you that are unaware, a gunman fatally shot two New York police officers yesterday, Wenjian Liu and Rafael Ramos, as they sat in their squad car, and then killed himself. The New York Times reported yesterday in the first deaths of police officers by gunfire in the city for 3 years, while they were patrolling in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn. Ismail Brinsley shot and killed them, execution-style, outside of the Tompkins houses in Bedford-Stuyvesant before 3 p.m. He opened fire on the patrol car's passenger side and fled into a nearby subway station. He then died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, typically a coward's way out. He was 28 years old, and apparently he had been taken to the Brooklyn Hospital Center. Now, the Reverend Al Sharpton, who's been heavily criticized over these incidents, a New York civil rights, an alleged, I have to say, New York civil rights leader who has supported the families of Mr. Brown and Mr. Garner, said he was outraged by the officers' killings and if they were related to the men's deaths. What about if they weren't related to the men's deaths? Shouldn't you be outraged about that too? Any use of the names Eric Garner and Michael Brown in connection with any violence or killing of police is reprehensible and against the pursuit of justice in both cases, he said in a statement. Now, what's your immediate reaction to this, Tony? What does this make you? How does this make you feel that two police officers have been killed in this way?
Well, I think that my first reaction when I heard it, I'll give you my initial one. Well, obviously sadness for the police officers and their family. It's always a great tragedy when an officer gets killed in the line of duty. But my first reaction was I thought of the PBA president in New York City and how people say ignorant things sometimes and then they eat their words. It was just a day or two before the shooting where he said he didn't want the mayor of New York attending any cops' funerals if they got shot, and called on the officers to sign a petition to the mayor saying if we're killed in the line of duty, don't attend our funerals. And that was
right.
just like a day or two before that, and I was just like, he had no way of knowing that would be that a day or two later would be the first officer shooting in years. And
No.
I'm wondering how he's feeling right now, and what if the mayor said, hey, I'm not going to attend those funerals. You didn't want me, I won't go, you know?
Well, at the press conference last night that Mayor de Blasio was attending, the officers actually turned their backs on him. And I think that there's a deeper issue than all of this for the NYPD. Now, so-called peaceful protesters were protesting in New York the other day about the deaths of Michael Brown and Sister Garner, whose first name I can't recall right now. But they were chanting "death to cops, death to cops, kill cops, kill cops," and nothing was said about that. Now, how is that? How is calling for violence to respond to someone's death? What help and assistance is that? What does that actually change?
Well, that's not a peaceful protest, and I would argue with anybody who's saying that that's a peaceful protest. I mean, that's even worse than no justice, no peace. At least no justice, no peace is vague, but calling up for the killing of police officers is not peaceful. It's a threat of violence. And I happen to feel very differently about the incident in New York than I did about Ferguson. Everybody from your show knows how I felt about the Ferguson incident. Okay?
Right.
I actually saw the video. I actually think it's a shame that they weren't that the grand jury thought that and that they weren't brought to justice. I think those officers were guilty of manslaughter.
Are you talking about with regards to the gentleman who died in New York?
Yes. I mean, I see the video myself, and there's just no excuse for that. And what got me was when the person with the camera was, "Why don't you help him?" and they're like, "He's still breathing." It just showed a total lack of concern for human life, you know? And
exactly.
I think an injustice was done there for sure, and I disagree with it, and I do agree with protesting that to an extent. But when you up that to calls for killing police officers and start talking in broad terms that the police are against us, you've created a very dangerous situation, and you know better than those you're seeking to
Absolutely.
stop. I mean,
because
violence
if
begets violence.
Yeah, if you're protesting against the fact that someone's been killed and you're calling for other people to be killed in response to that, you know, and apparently this is the thing for me. I really don't rate Al Sharpton, not because he's black or African American, but because he's a damn idiot. And to me, if you're supposed to be someone that leads your community or your section of the community, if you're always being divisive and not looking to bring the community together, that is not leadership in my book. Leadership is bringing people together. And, you know, people said to me, why are you not supporting any of this hashtag that says Black Lives Matter? Because I don't believe in segregation. All life matters. If you want to have a hashtag that says all life matters, then I'll be quite happy to support that. But when we start sectioning off sections of the community, that only divides us further. And it can't be a part of division. You know, my part of my mission is to unite people and bring the community together. And if you cannot do that, you cannot call yourself a community leader.
Well, as you're aware, Xander, I posted probably my most, honestly, I think it was my most direct, blazing Facebook post about a week or two ago.
Can I just say, can you switch the TV off or whatever in the background, because it's coming through really clearly?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Well, a few weeks ago, if you recall, I posted one of my most in-your-face posts when that white youth was killed by police in Comatose. But it didn't make the headlines. It didn't make the news, and it was a young white kid who didn't roll down his window for a police officer in a coma dying. No protests, no nationwide media coverage. And my response to that, I'm sure you saw the post, was, what, white lives don't matter anymore?
Exactly.
And that's what that's what this is. Like it only matters if it's a black person being killed. And I called it for what it is, and I'm surprised I didn't get more nasty comments back, but I didn't, because I think people knew I was speaking the truth deep down, which is, now this is racist. You don't care about white lives. You're singling out the black. Police brutality is an issue for everyone, and it knows no color. Abuse of power knows no color. You know, everybody has been the victim at some point, and there are good cops out there. But when you single out one segment of the population and just make them important, that's racism.
It is. In fact, it's actually inverted racism, because if what you're setting out to do is to prevent racism, it's kind of inverted racism. And you know, this is the thing that really gets to me about the attitude towards the police. How can you single out a whole profession and say that they're all bad? I mean, to me, this is just so ridiculous. So I went to a dentist in London who nearly broke my jaw, and she left me with such bad bruising that I had to go get treatment from somebody else. And so does that mean all dentists are bad? Does that mean all dentists are you know, we can't trust them? No, of course not. That was one particular dentist. So in order to actually cancel out a whole profession and label them as bad or racist, to me it's kind of ridiculous. Because let's face it, if you go out and do this job every day as a police officer, what you're actually dealing with the scum of the earth, people who are out there burglarizing and breaking the law and selling drugs and murdering and killing. You know, they really are the dregs of society. And if you're dealing with that every day and you have to make split-second decisions, how can you always get it right? And I'm not excusing anybody's behavior, and I'm not talking about any particular incident. But for me, we expect perfection from cops. When we're not perfect. In any situation in life, we're not going to get it right all of the time. So why do we expect perfection every time from police officers?
Now, that does go both ways, though. You know, like I said, I saw that video with the Staten Island police and what occurred with that person. First of all, that was a misdemeanor stop. There was no reason, no justifiable reason for that use of force for misdemeanor. And it was cold and it was callous. Now, it wasn't murder, it wasn't brutality maybe, but it was, I believe in New York State, the law, if I remember correctly, it's called depraved indifference to human life. I took law when I was in high school in New York, and back then it was called acting with a depraved indifference for human life. I saw the video. That was a depraved indifference for human life. They should have been punished for that. They should have been locked up there. What I don't understand, though, is in a way sometimes the law enforcement creates this hatred. Because you know what? There should have been cops. There should have been police unions. There should have been people that stood up within that blue wall and said, no, that was wrong. I would never do that as an officer.
Right.
I didn't see one cop go on TV or one representative or one leader of the police and say, you know what? That was wrong. That's not law enforcement. That's over the top. So in a way that goes both ways, if you know what I'm saying.
I totally know what you're saying. I mean, for just but like not that this is any way an excuse, but for me, if I'd have been the officer, now that officer had a history with, what's Mr. Garner's first name? I can't recall what his first name is. He had a history with that guy, so he should have let someone else deal with that, because them doing that, he could have been above reproach. He could not have been accused then of relying on the prior contacts with Mr. Garner and Eric Garner, and so that would have been a reasonable thing to do. I don't know why that situation got to the point that it did, because I don't feel he was resisting arrest. But none of those things for me, none of those things are really any kind of excuse or reasoning or back history with regards to why these two police officers were shot. If we're going to resort to self-help, you know, I've seen people, friends of mine, I've fought with on Facebook yesterday that were saying, what do I tell my black children that have seen this kind of thing going on and nothing is done about it? What do I tell them? That I totally see that, but that is not any justification for resorting to self-help because something has not gone your way. We have a system in this country, and we have a system of laws, and we have to exhaust that system of laws before we even think about resorting to self-help. But shooting two members of the police force and doing that in response to the fact that a black person has been killed, to me, that just demolishes your whole case and argument right away. Because cruelty begets its offspring's war. It's like if you're fighting violence with violence, we're forgetting who the aggressor is, you know?
And you know, Xander, I completely agree. I'll go a step further with you. I'll say something that I don't believe has been said yet. I haven't heard it yet. If it has been said, then I'm not the first. Al Sharpton has blood on his hands. He has the blood of those two New York City police officers on his hands. Because when you're going around screaming, no justice, no peace, oppression, 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 you're encouraging this. He has the blood of those two fallen officers on his hands, and all these people that are saying these things have the blood of those officers on their hands, and it's that simple. They are morally, if they are not legally responsible, but they are in a moral and ethical sense responsible for those officers' death. The same way that the ISIS folks and the Al-Qaeda folks are responsible when a lone wolf over here chops somebody's head off. They are the ones instituting the rhetoric and encouraging it, and that's what's causing it. And they can't wash their hands of this.
Things really do have to change, and I see that. Things have to change within the system of law, with regards to who is policing the police, with regards to how things are investigated and who they're investigated by. I totally agree with that. But you know, just imagine. I mean, to me, I watched this video the other night when these protesters were walking down the street and saying, "Death to cops, death to pigs." And do you know what? To me, it was reminiscent of some sci-fi movie. I actually found it quite frightening because, to me, this is just my opinion, but to me, the only people that need to fear the cops are those that are doing anything wrong. Because if you're a law-abiding citizen, and I'm not saying that law-abiding citizens don't get stopped by the police, but if you explain yourself calmly, you can usually walk away from these situations. But when you respond aggressively to a police officer, I think the wall goes up right away. I mean, you just imagine the reverse psychology. If I was a cop and I stopped someone and they were pleasant and polite, I would not want to jam them up or do anything to them that they didn't actually deserve. But if the response you get is aggressive, that brings all your barriers down right away. And for me, what the scary thing about all of this is if these kind of things carry on, the police unions are not gonna be allowing the police to go out unless there are 3 or 4 of them and are heavily armed. You know, we don't want our country to turn into a land without laws and policing, because if it does, it's going to be like all of the other countries that are military rule. It's going to be the army that's, it's going to be them that are coming to deal with stuff, and curfews at 9 o'clock and things like that. And you might think that that's far-fetched, but I worry that if we don't come back together as a community, that's the way it could go in this country.
Well, and I think we forget our recent history too quickly too. what we're seeing, what we're beginning to see, and I won't exaggerate it, but what we're beginning to see is a replay of the 1970s and the 1960s.
Yes,
when
exactly.
People were screaming, "Kill the pigs, kill the pigs." And there were, if you read history, or you know anything about history, there's people still in Cuba right now hiding from law enforcement. They were talking recently in the news about the woman who killed the New Jersey state trooper who fled. And there was the guy on Fox News Channel who was responsible for the deaths. There were people dedicated to going out and killing cops because they thought police were evil in the 70s. And that's just the way society was. And that was a lot of the prominent, quote, peace movement people were saying that. They were the same ones calling the soldiers baby killers. And that sort of rhetoric, like you pointed out, just produces more violence. I mean, the same thing with the same thing with blocking the stores. I tell you honestly, I don't fight. I'm not a violent person. I've barely been in fights. But if I'm going to the store and somebody's screaming at me and blocking my way, and I've got my family with me or my close friends, I'm going to go through them one way or the other. I'm going to say, "Who are you? I had nothing to do with this." Or if I'm trying to get to work and somebody's on a highway, there better be a police officer to stop my car from going through them. You know?
Well, you know, it's funny you should say that, because I saw some photographs and video footage of protesters that were standing in front of cars and trying to stop them. And to be honest, no matter how slow I have to go, if I have to push through to get to where I'm going, then that's what I'm going to do. You know, the road is the road is the road. You know, it's not a place to put. If you want to protest by the road, I'll come and stand with you. I'll make your banners for you, but don't protest on the highway. You know?
And don't. It's just like when somebody has a bad day. Well, don't take it out on me. You know, if I'm trying to get to work, don't block my way from earning a living for my. Not that hasn't happened to me personally, but I'm saying if I was on a road being blocked, of course. Don't block the road that I'm using to get to work to feed my family for, even if it was an unright action because you're trying to protest something, because you're hurting me who's innocent. So you're responding to what you say is protest an innocent person's death by harming another innocent person. It's illogical. It makes no sense. Somebody was hurt, therefore you're going to hurt others who had nothing to do with it.
I really think that you know, if I was an African American, I would really want Al Sharpton to step down, because if he says he speaks for the African American / Black community, then he's doing them a disservice. He's a rabble rouser. He's encouraged all of this, and he says he's anti-violence and all of this, but I don't like his style. I don't like his ideologies, because this is the thing for me about equality. You know, I've campaigned for equality for 25 years, but I'm not just looking for equality for whatever it is, the 25-letter acronym, for the gay community. I want equality for everybody. But when you want more rights for your group than anybody else, that's not equality. You know, equality is having everybody having the same rights. You know, a friend of mine said to me last night, she said, "Xander, so you're saying you don't think that there is racism in America?" No, I'm not saying I don't think there is a racism in America. I've seen it, and I've seen the division that it causes. And I've actually seen people on Facebook that are suggesting that all white people are racist. And that hurts my heart, because I don't care what color you are. If you're an ass, you're an ass. You know, if you're a good person, you're a good person, regardless of the color of your skin. And every race is going to have idiots and assholes. But you know, for me, I don't care what color your skin is. To me, it's not. The only reason it should be an issue is if I'm looking for 5 black models and 5 white models for an artistic shot. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And see, it really just saddened me, Xander, because you had in Ferguson a case where a thug was held up as a hero. A thug who bullied, if not committed a crime, was held up to be an innocent hero, and law enforcement vilified. And you know what's funny? if they hadn't done that, there might have been an even larger outcry. Because now I'm speaking as a middle-class white American, okay? When I saw Ferguson, I was like, this is ridiculous. That was a thug. These riots are wrong. They're acting like animals, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
When I saw the incident in New York, I said, that's wrong. And I wasn't reacting on basis of color. I was reacting on basis of right and wrong and the facts as I knew them. And that's what people have to do in these situations. We have to take the black, the white out of it. Like you said, we're all human beings. That's what should matter. You know, if a Muslim, look at what happened in Pakistan. Those Muslim school children were butchered and slaughtered, right? I don't say, oh well, those were Muslims. Oh, they would have grown up with bombs. I say, oh my gosh, children were killed. That's the way I look at it. If a black person is brutalized by the police, I say police brutality, that's a shame. If a white person is, police brutality, that's the same. If an officer gets shot, oh my gosh, that's a tragedy, he was protecting us. If a black paramedic gets killed, oh my gosh, he was trying to save lives, what a tragedy. We have to take race, religion out of the equation. And it's difficult to do, but that's what we have to learn to do as a nation.
It is, and the thing is that while we're not doing it, we're buying into this segregation. And while we're buying into segregation, we're never gonna have unity. And there is, I actually think there are some people that actually that is their aim. That is their aim, to cause segregation. And whilst we're segregated, we're not unified. We're not working to the same goals. And you know, I just it saddens my heart because we can't move on as a country. You know, I heard some things this week yesterday I saw that people were suggesting that the person that executed those two cops was it was an ISIS thing. That you know, like there's been all over the globe. It's happened in Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, but people in response to this ISIS bullshit, yes, I said ISIS bullshit, are doing these things and killing people in response to that. Now, do you think, you know, because this guy had a Muslim first name, do you think that is a part of it? What do you think?
I would say, and you know, I don't want anybody later on to say I misjudged what Al Sharpton's. I admit, making an assumption. I'm assuming that this was a racially motivated killing based on the incidents and the uproar. Now, if the facts turn out to be different and it was a Muslim extremist or just some lunatic that shot cops, then I apologize. But based on what is happening, based on what you hear on Twitter and Facebook, the calls for violence, I've seen them myself, people calling for police to be shot, for buildings to be burned, I'm under the assumption that this was nothing other than somebody who was troubled, who bought into the rhetoric to kill police officers because they were oppressing the black community. And that is my working assumption.
So where do we go from here, do you think, to avoid more vigilantism? Because it's going to take time to change processes. It's going to take time to reevaluate the way that we do things, the way that grand juries are put together and done in these cases. That is going to take time. Now, the thing that concerns me is that people that want change, they want it yesterday. You know, it's taken us a long time to get to where we are now, but it feels like we're going backwards. You know, like you said, it feels like we're back in the 60s or 70s again with the things that have been happening. What do you think is the answer to preventing more of this violence?
Well, I think that one thing is we can learn from our history. I've become a fan recently of Western history, of the Old West. And, you know, I was even watching the story of the Mormons the other day, and the thing is, we often complain a lot about our modern time, okay? But
right.
legends like, for instance, Billy the Kid and Jesse James are there for a reason. Robin Hood. There has always been abuse of power by the authorities. In the days when our nation was still young to us, say in the 1800s, the 1700s, abuse of power, lynch mobs, false charges, the 20s, the 30s, this was commonplace. I think that these are rare occurrences today, and an important thing, once again, you have to just go back and look at history and realize we have come very far. We've come to the point where people can see this on a TV and say, that's an outrage, and protest it. 50,
right.
60, 70 years ago, it wasn't spoken of, and people were sent to their deaths, and just the abuse of power was just part of it, you know? And I think that part of it is recognizing, not looking at the worst case scenario. Oh, what's happened? What's happened to society? What's happened to the world? It's looking at, we've made great strides. We've come a long way. Now let's get to the finish line. Let's go
right.
further. And not over-sensationalizing when these rare issues occur and make it sound like it's the end of the world or we're going back in time. Because, no, if you look at history from a factual perspective, we have made great strides. And abuse of power today by authorities is nothing compared to what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Definitely
People
not.
wouldn't even
But
be
you
asking these questions then.
You can't tell me, Tony, right, that the modern-day police force really want people in the force that abuse their authority or are racist or are not fit to do the job. I know for a fact that they wheedle these people out, you know?
No.
If you're not fit to be in the force, they don't want you there.
Exactly. And, you know, I never thought I'd be using Florida as an example for New York, but in this one case, I will actually. Because the thing about it is Florida had a recent shooting where a former law enforcement officer shot somebody in a movie theater, unarmed. The guy was a cop in Tampa. He was the head of the SWAT team, and he shot the guy in cold blood in the movie theater. Okay? Interesting distinction. Our local sheriff and law enforcement immediately arrested the man. You had cops on TV saying there's no excuse. This man dishonored his badge. And that's why I said law enforcement's partly responsible, because you have to police your own. With great power comes great responsibility. If you had more cops standing up on the front line and saying, wait, that was uncalled for. Why did you stop that kid? Why did you arrest that kid? Or when incidences like this occur, the leaders or the unions not defending them and holding the blue wall of silence, but saying, no, that's wrong. That's not what a police officer is. That's not like the rest of us. You might have a nation more at peace with the authorities. And that's my honest view on that they do bear some responsibility for this. You know, I tell people that as a social worker all the time. You had a bad experience. Oh, that's what happened to you? Well, that was wrong no matter what. You don't defend somebody just because they're your own. You defend somebody if they're your own because you understand and you're fighting for what's right. But if they're wrong, you say, no, that's not what I stand for, that's not what I believe in, and they should not have that title or that position of authority. That's what we need to see more of.
You're absolutely right, and I think we'll you know, obviously this is not going away, and we will continue to monitor the situation. Now let's go from the sublime to the ridiculous. Sony was recently hacked, and a number of unreleased films were pirated in the process, along with what are claimed to be sensitive internal corporate documents and emails. Now, the hack was originally claimed to be from a group calling themselves Guardians of Peace, but Sony thinks that Kim Jong-un might be the culprit, or at least the force behind the crime. An upcoming comedy called The Interview, which is a spoof about two reporters allowed into North Korea to do an interview with the glorious leader himself. A film promoted by Sony. North Korea has threatened to be resolute and merciless in their response against the U.S. unless it bans the film, which is about an attempt to assassinate their country's gracious leader, Kim Jong-un. Now, they tore into Sony's computer systems with a devastating data raid, possibly assisted by disgruntled company insiders, and flooded the internet with every bit of laundry they could find, from financial statements and sensitive personal data of Sony employees to nasty little email exchanges into which executives spoke poorly of their pricey talent. So, as you probably know out there, they're not releasing the film now as a response to all of this, because they're thinking it could be dangerous to have it in theaters with possible I'm just going to say the word, with possible terrorist activity, because this is what this is to me. This is terrorism. Now, there are lots of arguments about the movie with regards to whether it was appropriate to have that as part of a plot for a movie. I don't see anybody being concerned when. I mean, how many movies have they put in the plot about to kill the Pope, or how many movies have belittled the American presidents? I mean, they did it all the time about George Bush. So to me, for a country to take this level of response is absolutely ridiculous. And Kim Jong-un has now threatened to attack the United States if America retaliates. What do you think of all this, Tony?
I think that that we have to be very careful in our response. For one thing, I want to give the President of the United States time to do his job. Okay? For all we know, the President, and I've heard a lot of people, including me and the emotion, say, why don't we respond? Why don't we respond? This was aggression. Well, we don't know that the President right now isn't preparing some sort of massive cyber response or some sort of intervention. You know, we just don't know right now. And it's quite possible that he is.
But how much can you actually plan from the golf course, Tony?
How much what?
How much planning can you actually do on the golf course?
Well, I mean, we don't know.
That was a joke, obviously.
It might have been a joke by you, but a lot of people think when he's at that golf course, he's not doing his job. I mean, all he does is give the orders to people. For all we know, he's already in the process of ordering some super duper covert response. We did create that syntax virus with Israel that wiped out a bunch of computers, don't forget. We're very capable. So I want to give the President time to respond. That's the first thing. Number two, you have to balance world geopolitics. This kind of goes back to the Cold War scenario when you think about it. Nobody wanted to launch the first nuclear weapon because they were afraid everybody would launch the nuclear weapons. That's what kept us safe. Well, every country has the technology right now to launch cyber attacks and cripple infrastructure of another country. You know? Every country, just about every developed country has that technology. So if the President of the United States went on TV tomorrow and announced, we just launched a cyber attack against the state of North Korea in retaliation, he has committed the first official act of cyber warfare worldwide. That opens the door to a whole new warfare and all unforeseen consequences. So I think that you have to be very careful, and that's probably what he's weighing as the President of the United States now. Do I want to be known as the guy that led the world into the next state of warfare?
Well, you know, I don't think that America can afford another war. We're already paying the price of two wars that were really not our wars to fight. And I think that, you know, attacking, you know, Afghanistan and Iraq, when the aggressors in 9/11 were Saudis, is kind of, I'm still scratching my head about that one, because this is the thing. They're never going to attack Saudi Arabia because they're rich, they've got oil, and
right.
And I think, shall I tell you what I think? And it pains me to say this. Non-Americans that I know have said to me of late, don't you think that America is looking weak as a country nowadays? And sadly, I have to agree with them. I think that the country is on its knees, and the only way it's going to it's going to get out of the mess that it's in, is to stop the petty bickering, actually look at the real issues, and deal with things appropriately. But that's not happening right now. And whether you like Obama or not, he's been in office for, is it 6 years now? And during that time, he's been blocked at every juncture by the opposition. And now the conservatives are in charge of both houses. And it's kind of a little bit scary because top level politics, they've really at the most basic level, they have put the kibosh on everything he's tried to do. Now, I don't agree with all these policies. I don't agree with all the things that he's tried to do, but surely we should be loving America more than we hate the current administration. If we want to say we're patriotic, we should be loving America, because we're never, we're getting deeper and deeper in the doo-doo, and we're never going to get out of it. And the scary thing is, and we were talking about this in terms of the United Kingdom the other day, what happens is that the conservatives are in power. That's what they're called, the Republican, the British version of the Republicans. They F it all up, and because the Labour, which is like the Republicans, can't sort it out in the 2 terms of office that they're having, they actually there's no term limits over there. If they've not sorted it out within the first 2 terms of office, all the mess that has happened, then they want their conservatives in again to mess it up even more. So it's kind of it's a circular logic for me, and that kind of happens somewhat here too, because I wasn't living here at the time, but prior to the Bush administration, it was the Republicans. It was Clinton, and Clinton left office with a surplus, didn't he? When Clinton left office, there was a surplus, and when Obama took over, there was a deficit. Now, I'm sick of it all. I'm sick of he said, she said, she's to blame for this, he's to blame for that. We have to work together to make America great again, and if we can't do that when we're just bickering and blocking every attempt to enforce change.
However, that being said, and as much as I said, let's give the president time to respond, and he really has to contribute or take into account, excuse me, the implications of launching an official cyber attack on a actual nation state. That being said, if they have definite proof that North Korea was behind this and crippled a corporation in the United States. Now, it's not the crippling of the corporation. We have to make a distinction between a company getting attacked in the United States of America, I think, getting attacked. Now, what brings that over the line, though, to me, is if North Korea was truly responsible and they threatened, because that group threatened to make 9/11 look like a joke, and that's what got the movie pulled. They threatened to attack the theaters. So they committed an act of cyber warfare, devastating to a company, but then they threatened American citizens. Now, if it is found out that North Korea is responsible and was the group, then that does call for an official response of some sort from the United States of America.
It definitely does.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's not just an act of terrorism, it's an act of war. If you're saying, if the leader of this country said, if you show Friends on North Korean television, we will bomb you, that would be seen as an act of war. And that's exactly what they've done. They said if this movie is shown, they will kill American citizens in the movie theater. And I think they've pretty much admitted that it was them that did it. So I do kind of think it's been proven that they're behind it. But the biggest thing about all of this is, I don't know how old that guy is. He's very young, but but it's like giving Cartman the keys to the White House. It really is. That's what they did over there. And this guy is like, respect my authority, and he's like a 12-year-old boy, however old he actually is. I think he's 22 or something like that. But he succeeded his father, didn't he? When his father died, he took over. I think that's something they need to really look into, as in how because it's a dictatorship, isn't it? It's not. They didn't elect him into office. He just succeeded his father.
Well, and that is very much true. And once again, my opinion could change if a week or two goes by and we don't hear of any action from the president. Like I said, there is action definitely called for, okay? And that's not we condemn North Korea in the strongest sense of the word speech. It's no, we have done something as a consequence to defend ourselves because we were attacked in the cyber realm and you threatened to attack us in the physical realm. So it does call, it's an act of war as you stated, and it should be responded to if they can definitely prove it. I'm just saying they have to be very careful in how they respond. If the United States government launches the first ever known cyber attack against another nation, then we have just fired the first shot of the cannon equivalent or the first nuclear weapon, because that opens up an entire new precedent in warfare. Then any nation, can attack another nation's infrastructure through computers.
But does it make you want to see the movie?
Oh, absolutely. I think most Americans want to see the movie. I'd like to take a public crap on Kim Jong-un's head, and film it and post it on YouTube and say we love you, Kim.
Let's face it. If you're not for us, you're against us, and it's time Americans got together and remembered what this country is all about. And we never used to be this namby-pamby 20 years ago. And as much as I hate to say it, I have a lot of respect for Reagan. Reagan wouldn't have put up with this shit.
No, there would have already been a response. Are you kidding me? Mind you, it may not have been the response a lot of us might have agreed with. I venture to say if Ronald Reagan was president, there would have been bombs already dropping.
Yeah, he might have sent them a box of donuts and a box of Joe, but no, I'm just joking. Yeah, he wouldn't have put up with this. Well, I want America to get tough again. I want us to be that world force once again, and not a laughing stock. I mean, I had a conversation last night where my friend was telling me that it was so appropriate for President Obama to hand back the Taliban, that had been in custody, even though they are now plotting against us again,
Well, and I think that you touched on something really important about this country that we often forget. I don't know if you've seen the new Red Dawn movie. It came out a year or so ago, and I like the original Red Dawn. I didn't bother to see the new one. But let's take a Red Dawn scenario, for instance. If another country did invade the United States of America, you would see rednecks with rebel flags fighting side by side with the inner city gangster. And I'm very confident of that. Everybody would forget their differences really quickly and stand together as Americans. But see, we need to communicate that to the rest of the world again. And that's the problem. The world sees us as a joke right now. Like, oh, those Americans can't agree on anything. Oh, they're trying to lead us. No, somehow this nation needs to communicate on the world stage. Again, look, we might have our differences. That's what makes us strong. But we are all Americans. We are a brotherhood. We are a nation. We are a proud nation. Do not mess with us. We will defend ourselves. It's that simple.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of quite disillusioned with the Obama administration right now on a number of issues, but I don't know who is good enough to take over and to make a real difference. Do you? I mean, a lot of people are saying Jeb Bush is the front runner, and it's probably going to be Jeb Bush versus what's her name, Elizabeth Warren. Well, no, apparently in the polls, in the kind of just the public popularity polls, Elizabeth Warren has just come out of nowhere, and everybody kind of wants her. But as much as a lot of my Republican listeners are going to hate this, because I do have a mixture of listeners, I'm afraid for another Republican administration. I really am, because I don't feel like the Republican Party fully represents me as a gay man living in these United States.
I don't think they fully represent anyone, and that comes down to an important point that I was kind of saying. We are a hypocritical nation at best, especially with our foreign policy. Like, we're criticizing China right now for the Hong Kong, right? Because China basically said to the people of Singapore, you're not having elections. We're going to present you two candidates, and that's our idea of democracy. You pick between them. Our committee will select them, and you pick between the two candidates that our committee selects, and that's your election. And what did the students do? They went out and protested. We want real democracy like America. Those poor kids, that is American democracy. That's our nominating system in this country. The major power players behind the major parties get together in their little backdoor rooms, select the leading candidate, they get nominated, and America has a choice, A or B, a false choice. And that's what happens in this country. So really, when we criticize dictatorships and people for being undemocratic, we really have to take a good look about the United States of America and realize we're not a democracy. We're a republic. And I know people hate that saying, but it is true. We are not democratic. We are a republic, and there's a very big difference in that. And there are
but we're a republic that operates as
process.
Right, but we're a republic that operates as a democracy, aren't we?
Well, do we really operate as a democracy, though, would be my question. I mean, I'm going to take the Florida election, and I admit I have a bone to pick with the issue. We had the Libertarian candidate, Wiley, here. He polled at the polls. He was polling around 15%, okay? By the debate rules of the networks, anybody that polled at that percentage, right, should have been included in the debates between Governor Scott and Charlie Crist. Do you know what happened? The networks changed the debate rules to a higher percentage so that Wiley could not get into those debates. And I heard people on network TV calling in and writing letters, and the commentators reading them saying, we wish we had a third choice. Mind you, there was a third candidate running, but nobody knew because he was locked out by the two-party political system. So as democratic as we'd like to say, we're not really all that democratic.
Well, whether you like her or not, Roseanne Barr, when she stood for the presidency, she was not allowed to participate in most of the debates. With the other parties like the Green Party, et cetera, they didn't invite her. So that was ridiculous. And I have to say, regardless of Roseanne being a comedian and things like that, I actually agreed with a lot of her ideologies and a lot of her standing, but she was not allowed to participate in the debates. And to me, that was just ridiculous.
It was wrong. And I'm a big history fan, Xander, and I don't claim to know everything about history. It's not like I'm a historian or anything, but there's a lot of things people miss in history, and then they misinterpret the current times because they don't understand history. Two good examples of that are the Indian. Like when we had Columbus Day, I was so mad. You had a lot of ignorant idiots, I repeat, ignorant idiots, talking about Christopher Columbus committing mass murder against the Indians and how he was a mass murderer and genocide and this and that, because it was politically correct. Not one of those people making those postings bothered to talk about all the slaughters and massacres by Native Americans on white settlers. See, it was a two-way street. But that fact of history is missed in the political correct times. I am not demeaning Native Americans in any way. I'm saying if you're going to take a stand, report it accurately. Same thing with the Revolutionary War. We like to talk of the Revolutionary War if it was this great struggle for freedom. Really? Black people were thought of as 3/4 of a person. I believe that was the compromise, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly.
Women had no rights, and the Revolutionary War was not this glorious revolution fought for liberty. It was a bunch of rich merchants in New England, upper-class, wealthy merchants who decided they wanted the money and they didn't want to give it to the king. That was the basis of the American Revolution. It wasn't freedom and democracy, and that concept of freedom and democracy wasn't for all people. It was for upper-class white Americans, or Englishmen at the time, who were seeking to be American and not English.
Exactly, and a lot of this doesn't change. I just want to point out, though, to our Native American listeners, if you got any beef about the commentary in today's show, make sure you're directed directly at Tony, and that's Full Story 2014 on Twitter.
Gee, thank you, Xander. Yes, and once again, actually, let me just roll that back on a clarification. I'm saying the massacres happened on both sides, and when you point out one white person that did it, you're warping history, and in fact you're lying, because it happened on both sides of that issue. Native Americans are the one group in this country who have a right to, they were here first, and they're the poorest minority right now, and nobody often talks about them or their plight. Their land was taken. That's all established fact. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying when you go overboard and when you start saying, oh, those white people killed the Indians, but then you don't talk about the Indians killing the white people, there's a problem there.
Absolutely. And I think we've come full circle, Tony, and I think that really this all of this kind of like ties in with everything we've been talking about today. You know, there are a lot of things that we can't change that have happened, but it's imperative to learn from them and to grow, because if we don't, we stand still. We just stand still, and if we stand still, we actually move backwards. And whilst I'm trying to see as many points of view in all of these things as possible, you know, it is very simple. You know, the answers are very simple, but whether people want to hear the answers and to do something that makes a difference is actually a totally different matter.
And that is a sad commentary, is a lot of people would rather just sit back on the sidelines and not have intelligent conversations. Or, you know, one of my favorite quotes is, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to do it.
Exactly.
You know? And the thing is, don't if you disagree with what I said, for instance, on this program, have an intelligent debate with me. Tell me why I'm wrong. But don't insult me. Don't give me talking points of what you heard. Come up with your own legitimate fact-based viewpoint and change my mind and question everything. That's really what we need to be doing as a population, and not be into our smartphones and our Facebook and everything else and get so distracted, which I do myself. But we need to really keep an eye on the issues.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. And that's a brilliant point to close on. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tony. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Tell people where they can find you on social media for civil discourse purposes, not for attacking.
Well, as you said, the Full Story 2014, or you can find me on Facebook at Anthony Losacco. Maybe I should spell that because nobody probably knows how. It's Losacco. So if you just look up my name on Facebook, you'll see me on Facebook. In the meantime, I want to not miss out on the last opportunity to offend some of your viewers, and I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. And I say
Amen
Merry Christmas
to that, brother.
Because nobody should be offended by it, because whatever you are, you should be happy that somebody's wishing you well, no matter what your religion is.
Hey, I'm a Jew for Jesus. I celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas because I'm greedy. So you have a choice there, listeners. You can either send me a Hanukkah card or a Christmas card. You can even send me a Kwanzaa card, but I won't be sending one back to you, unfortunately. So thank you so much, Tony, for joining us. I hope that you'll come and join us again next year, which seems like a long way away, but it's only like just over a week. Give our love to Kiko. You have a fabulous Christmas, and we will speak to you again very soon.
You too, Xander. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Tony. It's always a pleasure. That was my good friend, Tony Losacco. Make sure you check him out on Facebook and Twitter, and make sure you follow him and enter into civil discourse. That was the show for today. If you have commentary, feel free to go to our website, www.xandergibb.com. Tell us what you think. Go to the Facebook pages, also www.facebook.com/XanderGibb. You can check me out on there. Tell me what you thought of the show today, etc., etc. We aim to please. Next week we'll be back with Ty Pauly for a look back at 2014. We'll be looking at what's been in 2014. So thanks to everybody who's made today's show possible. Thanks to Tony Losacco. Thanks to you for listening, and I hope you will join us again next week. Please remember to thank a policeman for keeping you safe. And please remember the families of the two gentlemen that were killed yesterday, Officer Weijian Liu and Rafael Ramos. Thank you very much for listening, and I love you all. Bye-bye.